joining from everyone from all around the world is joining today. So we're in all different time zones. So we are ready to start, Stefano. So thank you so much for joining us. I believe all the way from Italy. Is that correct?
Exactly. And thank you, every one of you, to be here, and thank you to invite me to this conference. So let me know if I can start.
Yes, please, Stefano. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So the goal for today for me in this session is giving you an overview of what is present today in Business Central related to the possibility of integrating Business Central with the Power Automate and Dataverse. I want to present what's the status of today and what's planned for the near future. So my goal today is giving you a complete overview of the possibilities and make you able to understand the power of these new features available. Here is my contact in case you have questions or something like follow up after this session. So feel free to bookmark and write me directly if you have maybe doubts or questions after the meeting. So I want to start with this schema. Why this schema is important? Because normally in Business Central projects, we usually see this piece of the architecture. So the ERP box, but the world of the Power Platform and the Microsoft Word in general is big, and normally an efficient Business Central project should not be totally linked to the ERP side, but should add also all the other part of this big infrastructure. And a Business Central project can benefit a lot from other services that you can see in this slide. My goal for today is giving you the overview of what you can do with Business Central together with some pieces of the Power Platform, in this case, Power Platform and Power Automate. But I usually put the alert also on the Azure stuff. Today, we're not talking about the Azure stuff, but the Azure stuff is absolutely important in a Business Central project. So where we are today, in Business Central today, we have connectors for different components of what is called the Power Platform. Previously, Stephen has shown you what you can do with Power BI. With Power BI, you have a Power BI connector, and you have also template of apps available for having immediately reports created in Business Central. Business Central has also the possibility to connect to the Power Platform, Power Apps, and Power Automate with a dedicated connector. I always remember that the same connector that you have in the Power Platform, so for Power Apps and Power Automate, is also available in Logic Apps. Logic Apps is the superset of Power Automate available on Azure. Absolutely, my recommended service if you want to create complex workflows and integration workflows. Business Central has also today a Dataverse integration based on Dataverse virtual tables. Business Central can connect to Dataverse virtual tables, and we'll talk later about this. And Business Central can also integrate with Dataverse with what is called data sync. So possibility to sync Business Central tables with Business Central with the Dataverse data. All these connectors are available today, are out of preview today, and permits you to create an entire ecosystem that works, permits you to work together across not only Business Central and the Power Platform, but across all the entire Dynamics 365 ecosystem. Because I always remember that Dataverse is what is called the data layer for Dynamics 365. So the Business Central connector. Business Central connector permits us to run Power Automate flows directly integrated into Business Central. And you can also use it in Power Apps, and permits you to directly use Business Central data inside your components. The Business Central connector, with Business Central connector now with Power Automate, my focus will be on Power Automate. So the Business Central connector with Power Automate permits you to create automated or manually triggered instant flows. And you can do that directly from the user interface of Business Central today. So directly from Business Central, you can create a flow. This flow is created and saved into the Power Automate portal, and it's available immediately on the Business Central user interface. Otherwise, you can go to powerautomate.microsoft.com, create your flow here, and directly from Business Central, you can see all your flow and use that flows inside Business Central. So you have both ways to work with the Power Automate connector. This connector is available, as said before, for Power Automate. For Power Automate is listed as a premium connector. It's available for Power Apps, and for Power Apps is available as again as a premium connector, and is also available for Logic Apps. So Logic Apps connector is a standard connector because in Logic Apps you don't pay for a fixed license, but you pay for execution of actions. So there are cases where Power Automate is much cheaper than Logic Apps, or vice versa. It depends of the scope of the project. Please remember also that the Business Central connector also supports multiple production and sandbox environments. So you can work with multiple production and sandbox environment directly from the Business Central connector. The Business Central connector actually supports all the entities that you expose as APIs. So custom entities and standard entities. In this new release, so in the upcoming version 21 release, the Business Central connector is renamed as Dynamics 365 connector. So not it's the preview word is disappeared. It supports media, image. It will support media and images, not actually already, but it will support media and images. It supports document attachments, and it deprecates all the version 1 actions. So in the new Business Central connector, you will see all the new actions. The old V1 actions are actually deprecated. Power Automate is the other part of the side that we talk together today. Power Automate is a low-code and designer-first automation tool for creating workflows in the Dynamics 365 ecospace. It has an in-browser editor, works directly on Office 365. It permits you to have connectors and flow templates predefined that works with across a big stack of applications. There are more than, I think, 300 of connector available for Power Automate today. Business Central, as I said before, is a premium connector, so it requires a premium license. And you have also flows integrated into Business Central. So when you create a Power Automate flow, you can directly select Business Central as a data source. And when you select Business Central as a data source, you have a lot of predefined triggers and actions that you can use for creating your flows. And when you create a flow directly into Business Central, you have a page called Manage Power Automate Flow that permits you to create and manage your flow directly in the ERP without going to make.powerautomate.com. You have the choice to use the both words. When we use Power Automate, you can directly create a flow from, for example, an entity, for example, a document. You have directly Power Out in Business Central a button to create a flow or see your existing flow. If you create a flow directly in Business Central, shows you the predefined template that you can use for this type of flow. In this case, I'm in order, so it shows me all the approval workflows linked to the purchase order. You can select the template, and then you can start customizing your template directly from the Power Automate portal in the usually visible graphical way. When you save this workflow is automatically saved into Business Central and visible as a cloud flows inside also Power Automate. This is what is present also in the previous release of Business Central, And this is all the available permissions, all the available features that you can have instead of until Business Central 20. Now you have something more. In Business Central 20, Microsoft has added an interesting action called Find Record. The action of Find Record permits you to retrieve records by applying OData filters. So you can select the entity that you want, and you can also apply a filter query to that entity. Also, you can also apply the ordering and the top record that you want to retrieve. This permits you to apply OData filtering to the action and retrieve all the data that you want. This action is available starting from Business Central 20, not before. Please remember also that in Business Central, you can also test the flow. A flow can be directly tested into Power Automate, and the connection with Business Central execute the code. If there's an error, the flow fails. You can troubleshoot the issue directly from the Power Automate portal by clicking on the failed flow, and you can see why the flow is failed. And you can also use the flow checker inside Power Automate to find if you have error or warnings. When your flow is completely tested and for you is ready to be shared with users, an important action of flow is the sharing action. Power Automate has the concept of is bound to a user. So when you create a flow, is bound to the user who creates the flow. But normally you want to share that flow inside your organization. And the action is called the action of sharing a flow. It can be done from the Power Automate portal. In order to be able to share a flow, you need to add an owner to the cloud flow. An owner means that the owner can be the creator of the flow or another user that you add as an owner. And it's absolutely recommended to add an owner to the flow, and maybe more than one, because if someone leaves the organizations, you could have a problem with your flows. You can share a flow also as an owner, so adding an owner and sharing as an owner, but you can also share a flow with run-only privileges, so someone that can only execute in the flow and without changing the definition of the flow. Or you can also share a copy of a flow. Sharing a copy means that you can share your flow definition with another that can use it as a template in order to create another flow. It cannot be directly modify your shared flow. Adding an owner to a cloud flow is normally the most common way to share a flow, because when you add an owner, you are sharing the flow to that owner, and any owner of a flow can control the flow, can view the run history, can manage the properties of the flow, so like starting, stopping, changing credentials if you are using embedded credentials and so on, and obviously changing the definition, so removing actions, adding actions, and so on, and also delete the flow. So the owner has full control inside that flow. Adding and sharing a flow is very easy, because you can do that from the user interface. So you select the flow that you want to share with your organization. You click on the three dots, and you can select the share button. When you select the share button, you are prompted with a window that permits you to select who are the owners of that flow. And it's important to do that. And please also remember that when you remove an owner, and that owner is the user whose credentials are used to access the Power Automate services, you should normally update this credential for the connection that you are using. Otherwise, your flow will fail. So it's important to remember that when removing owner, if your flow uses connections, and these connections are linked to the previous owner, you need to update that connections in order to work properly. As said before, you can also share a copy of a flow with another user. If you share a copy, you are not sharing your flow, but sharing a copy means that you can select your flow and click send a copy. And with this, you can select the user. And when sharing a copy, you are creating a new instance of the flow that can be used as a template for creating other flows. When you share it as a copy, you can't revoke access to the flow. So it's an action that cannot be undone. You have shared a copy. A new addition in Business Central. So now we start seeing the new additions. The new addition in Business Central related to Power Automate is the possibility to execute flows in the context of a selected record. This means that latest updates of Business Central 20 creates a new trigger called for a selected record, named as a version 3, that permits you to trigger a flow in the context of the record where you are in Business Central. And this trigger is only available for Power Automate. You don't have this trigger available for other types of workflows, so no logic apps or something like that. What does that mean? If you check Business Central, you have in your records, you have a new Automate ribbon. In this Automate panel, you can you have two possibilities. You have the possibility to start creating a flow or managing existing flow. And if you start creating a new flow, Power Automate opens in the context of the existing record. Here in the same panel, you can also see all the workflows that runs in the context of the existing record. So if you create a workflow that runs in the context of the existing record, you can see it listed here, and you can directly execute that action from the Automate window. If you select to create a flow, from Business Central, the Power Automate portal is automatically opened. And from here, you are immediately jumping to the Power Automate page where for a selected record action, the trigger, sorry, is automatically open. Here, you can select the environment, the company name, if you want to link this workflow only to that specific environment or only to that specific company. Otherwise, you can leave it blank and you can use them in multi-company and multi-environment. And you can also add a scope, so you can limit the action to a specific context by filling the page or table field. The page or table field permits you to link this workflow only to be executed, only and visible only to that specific page or that specific table. Table means the record that pertains to a specific page. And filters can be specified like this with this format. So, for example, in this format, we are specifying that this workflow that we are creating will be only available to the user that runs page 21 or page 22 or this table. So, for example, works only in the customer card, the customer list, and on the customer table, not in other parts of the application. And then you can start creating flow. Another interesting possibilities that you have on this action is the add an input parameter. Add an input means that you can add input parameters. Input parameters are parameters that the user interface of the workflow asks to the user. So you can have interactive parameters that the user can fill, and then when filled, the workflow starts and execute others. Parameters can be text, number, Boolean, all the data, the supported data type that you can have. So it's quite useful for creating user interface workflow where you can select the type of parameter that your user can input as input to your workflow and before executing the workflow. To show that in action, let's jump. Let me jump with in Business Central. And from here, I can, for example, open, I don't know, the customer car, for example. And you can see that if I click on more options, you have the new automate action. And in the new automate action, you have Power Automate, where you can create a flow or manage a flow. If you select create a flow, directly Power Automate opens. And from here, starts the creation of a new flow that is automatically proposed for a selected action trigger. Here you can specify your environment, your company. So I can select, for example, that I want this workflow running here only with inside this company, or you can also leave it blank. This means that it will be available in all your environment and all your companies. Okay, this is my company, and you can also specify page or table filters if you want. Then this means that the workflow, when run, starts with the context of the record where you are. So, for example, it takes if I run it from the customer car, it takes the context of the customer. And yeah, for example, I can select table 18 or page 22, I don't know. And you can also add an input. Add an input means that you can select user input variables. Like, for example, I want a text variable that asks me to select the name of the customer or something like that. Parameter that when you execute the workflow, this will be asked. And then you can obviously create new steps. Just to avoid creating a new workflow from scratch and showing one of the previously created, I've previously created a workflow here. This workflow, the update posting date workflows that runs in the context of sales orders. So exactly like this, done before, it runs in the context of the sales order. It's asking the new posting date. It's a date parameter called new posting date. I selected date type, so it's asking me for a date type. Then when the workflow runs and this action is completed, you are in the context of the record, of the selected record where you are in Business Central. So you need to retrieve that record if you want to perform actions on that record. So I'm adding a new action. The new action is always from the Business Central connector, and this is called get record. These new actions works on this table, the sales order table. So you can select from here. You can select all the available tables that you have in Business Central. Not tables, sorry. The correct name is all available APIs that you have in Business Central. But because please remember that these are not tables. You don't see here all the tables that you have in Business Central, but you can see only the entities that you have exposed as APIs from Business Central. Entities that are can be custom or standard. It depends on the API category that you select here. So if you have a custom API, you will have a new custom category, and you can select your custom category and select your entity. In this case, I've selected the sales order, and I'm in order to retrieve the record, I'm using the row as row ID, the system ID that comes from the previous action. So the previous action returns me these fields. I'm using the system ID as row ID. With this action, I'm retrieving the record, the current record where I am. And then I again call the updated record action from the Business Central connector, where I'm updating this record, where the ID is the ID of the record returned by this action. And in the update, I only updated the posting date field by passing the new posting date field that comes from the previous action, the first action. When you save this flow, what happens in Business Central is that if I open the sales order, page. If I open the sales order page and I don't know, I open a sales order. And I go to the Power Automate tab. The Automate tab. Sorry, I'm not in the right environment because the environment is not this. Let me check why. It's not it's the wrong environment. Sales order. Yes, it's the right environment. I'm the right company. Yes. Okay. I don't know why it's not available here. Sorry. What happens? I don't know why it's disappeared. What happens is that we can retry to do that. What happens is that the flow will be available here in this space, and you can start executing that from this directly. So you can execute the flow directly, asking parameters, and all you can execute directly all the flow that you want directly in the context of this record. So very easy to create and very powerful to create. We can try to recreate. I don't know why it's not available. I think that maybe I've removed the action. Let me try to do that because I would like to. Sorry for that, but sometimes demo effects. Okay, let's try to recreate that flow. For example, I go here. I go here, the Power Automate, create a flow. We create a very stupid flow, but just I would like to show you that the flow appears. So I select my environment, I select my company, I select page 21. I add an input called name. I don't know, just to show an input, and then I add from Business Central. From the Business Central, I select the Business Central connector. I select the get. Sorry, I select the on-premise connector. It's not what we want, but we want the online connector. This is the online connector. So I want the get record. I can select this. I can select this. I select the API subscription. My table name is the customer table because I want to work on the customer. And the row ID is the system ID of the previous action. And then I can add something like, I don't know, email, sorry, email Outlook, just to show that send an email. My address, saying that BC workflow And in the body, I can add something like display name and the number of the customer. Just a very stupid. I can save this. And if I don't have problem, or if I don't have problem on my preview environment, we should have the workflow popping up when refreshing the customer. If it's not popping up, it's because my preview environment has some problems. More options, automate. Okay, sorry, I've not renamed the workflow. Obviously, you should give the workflow a meaningful name. Otherwise the name is you should rename this. Otherwise, it takes this name as standard. And but what I would like to show that this is the workflow. If you can click here, the workflow starts. And obviously, the first time that you execute the workflow asks you for signing in all the services that you are using. As you said here, my workflow asks for a parameter because I've placed the parameter. So I can write something like here, one of the parameters that my workflow uses, and then I can execute the workflow. The workflow runs, does what you want, or complex that you want, and then it's executed. You can check the workflow execution by going to your workflow and checking the run history. You can inspect the run history and so on. So see if you have a record, errors, or something like that. So this is the new Power Automate action available. And about that, please remember that in this new release, version 21, you have no need to enable this feature in feature management, but it's available out of the box. So no need to re-enable via feature management. This feature can also be controlled user by user via permission sets. So you can control who can do that. Can also be promoted and fully personalized or customized. And very interesting, can also be managed via IL code. And later I will show you how to do that. So from IL code, you can create actions that points to workflows directly managed by the user. Another important aspect that I think is not documented, but in my opinion is quite important, is that the possibility to execute flows in the context of the selection record is also available if you use standard methodologies that you can use in Power Automate. So, for example, when you create solutions in Power Automate or Power Apps in general, normally you have two environments, the developer environment and the default environment. So this is the environment where you develop your feature, your workflow in this case, and this is the environment where you test your workflow. What you want to test, you want to release your workflow in. This is the development and this is the production environment, just to speak clearly. Normally, what you do in a Power Automate or Power Apps solution, you create what is called an unmanaged solution in the dev environment, where you can define your workflow, test your workflow, and so on. You add connection references to this unmanaged solution. Connection references are the possibility to connect external services. And when all is ready, is tested and ready to be deployed in production, you export it as a managed solution. Export this as a managed solution from the developer environment. Then, later step, you import this managed solution into the default environment. And these scenarios is also supported in this type of workflows in Business Central. So in Business Central, just to very quickly show that, if you see here, if I reopen my previously created, sorry, I go back from here, I previously created sales orders, you can see that if I click on the automate, I have, okay, now it's appeared, sorry. What I want to show before was this, the update posting date workflow. That is the workflow that runs update the posting date of an order. But what I have here another workflow that I call it context flow via solution. This workflow was not created directly from here, but someone creates it for me. So what happens here? I have, if I go into my Power Automate environment, I have different environment here. This is my development environment. In my development environment, I can create a workflow here. So I can, create a solution. The normal steps to, if you want to apply best practices, is I create a solution. Come on, open the solutions. Inside the solution, this is my solution. If I open this solution, you can see that inside this solution, I can create different type of objects. In this case, in my solution, I have a connection reference. The connection reference is the, come on. The connection reference is, okay, now it's loaded. The connection reference, you can add different type of entities inside the solution. In my case, there are a connection reference and a cloud flow. The cloud flow is the definition of the workflow, as exactly as said before. The connection reference is, you can add, click on here, select connection reference. Connection reference is the connection, in my case, to the Business Central, to a Business Central environment. First, you create the connection reference, then you create the workflow, and the action of the workflow can use as connection this connection reference that you can later change when you move workflows across environments. So this is the best practice if you want to move complex workflows across environments. And when this work is finished, so you have created the connection reference, you have created your complex workflows and all other entities that you want to add, you can go into your solution. Here you can select your solution. You can export this solution as a managed solution. It creates you click on here and you can click export solution, and you can export it as first you need to publish, and then you can export it as managed. When you export it as managed, you can download a zip file that you can switch environment, and you can then import into your real-world production environment. So you go into solution, and here you click import solution. When you import solution, and that solution contains a workflow that starts with the Business Central actions in the context of selected record automatically. So this is my imported workflow. When you import this workflow into the production environment, automatically you see that from Business Central. So in this case, this is my opinion, the best scenarios where someone in your organization creates a complex workflow and they share it with you or with the other user. This scenario is absolutely supported from Business Central, not yet documented, but it's possible to do, and honestly also recommended. As said before, in Business Central 21, you will also have the possibility to add these actions, workflows action via code. Business Central 21 adds the possibility to create a custom action, new keyword, that permits you to add an action where this action is custom action type flow. This means that we'll execute a flow. Actually, only flow is possible. You can specify the flow ID to execute and the flow environment ID where this flow will execute. And when you publish this extension, automatically the Power Automate tab adds a new action called, in this case, this is the name, that permits you to automatically run this action. So this is available, will be available in Business Central 21 in order to, via code, execute actions. So this is what is available now and now in Power Automate. The other big changes, I think, is related to virtual tables. Virtual tables are in Dataverse. You have the possibility to expose data that comes from other applications as virtual tables. So Business Central Virtual Tables is a solution that you can install on your Dataverse environment that permits you to expose Business Central entities as tables in Dataverse. But in this case, all the data exposed are available across all the Dynamics 365 suite. So all Power Apps application, Dynamics 365 application can directly in real time read business and write Business Central data from that table. And the power of that is that when you have a virtual table, the data for the virtual tables does not reside in Dataverse, but the data is again inside Business Central. Virtual tables are obviously API based, so you are not exposing the table inside the Business Central backend, but you are exposing the API that comes from Business Central, custom and standard. And then when exposed, these are consumable from Dataverse and for other applications. Important to remember is that the new change that comes from Business Central 21 is a new version of the virtual tables for Dataverse application. This new application permits you to support data change events. So supports event that comes from Dataverse. So when someone added, modified, or deleted a record from a virtual table in Dataverse, you can do actions. This is extremely powerful because every application that uses Dataverse can read or write your virtual table exposed in Business Central, and you can react to them and doing every type of actions you want. I think that, in my opinion, this is the best features actually available to interact the entire Dynamics 365 suite with Business Central. Later, I will show some examples. How virtual tables for Dataverse works. The first thing that you need to do is open an environment from the Power Platform Admin Center. Open your environment, and from your environment, go in AppSource, and then from AppSource install an application called Business Central Virtual Table Preview actually. Click on Get It Now. This application is installed into your environment. And when installed into your environment, you have the possibility to configure virtual tables. To configure virtual tables, you need to select the Dataverse tab, go into the tables, and from here, you need to do some steps. The first, you need to configure the virtual data source. This configuration means that you need to select what is the environment that acts as a data source for the virtual table. So you click on here, and you can select, for example, the connection to your production environment or sandbox environment, where you want. So you click on here, you select Business Central, and then you can, from here, select the environment and the company that act as the base from Business Central. This is the first step of the configuration. The second step of the configuration, absolutely important, is going into Business Central, selecting the Azure Active Directory application page, and from here you have an entry field called Dynamics 365 Business Central for Virtual Tables. You need to enable it, otherwise you cannot do that. Later I will show that actually in Business Central 21, there's also a setup that permits you automatically do this enable, and also something more. When the setup is done, In Business Central, you can search for tables, and you can search for a table called Available Business Central Table. So in Power Apps, sorry, you search for Available Business Central Table. And in the Available Business Central Table, if you go on the data, you can see all the list of the available entities, the Business Central entity exposed as API. If you want to enable an entity, simply just click here, one of these buttons. Default all entities are visible now. If you click, you are making them visible, and in this case, this entity becomes a virtual entity in Dataverse. In Business Central 21, you can directly go into the assisted setup, click on Setup a connection to Dataverse, and you can automatically enable the virtual tables. And important, now you have also the possibility to enable the virtual tables and events. This is the power of this integration, because when enabling that, you can do something similar in Dataverse. So you can have a new trigger called when a row is added, modified, or deleted in Dataverse. You can select your virtual table. You can select the scope. So default is the organization, and then you can retrieve the record and do actions. So what's the power of that? If I publish, for example, in this case, the customer has a virtual table, and this customer table is visible to all the applications that work with Dataverse, so Power Platform, Dynamics 365, and so on. If someone modifies this table in Dataverse, I can react and I can do action, but not only across Business Central, but also across the entire ecosystem in Dataverse. So you can see that if I trigger them, the action is triggered and data is executed and so on. This action is also important because it permits you to specify, for example, what columns are needed in order to react. So, for example, when someone adds or modify or delete a customer, I don't want to react, for example, in a modification of every field, but I can specify here the list of fields that for me are comma separated fields in order that can be considered if I want to trigger the flow. Just to quickly show this, let me jump to my environment. Okay, here. I can, if in this environment, if you enable virtual tables, in this environment, you can click on tables, and you can search for field, click on all, and search for Business Central. And you can see that you have three available entities. The first is where you configure the data source. So you link Dataverse to, for example, the production environment in Business Central and the company Cronus. And the second is the Available Business Central table. If you click on the Available Business Central table, it loads all the definition of the entities visible to Dataverse. So all the API entities. And from here, you can specify what you want to expose to Dataverse as virtual tables. As you can see here, I expose the customer, I expose the vendor, I expose, I don't remember, the item. What happens here? If I go, for example, I don't know, the customer, if I select edit, if I select the customer, I'm on Dataverse now. So if I select the customer, this come on. Okay, here you can click it visible, and you can also refresh. Refresh is useful if you have changed the definition. If you change the definition of maybe an API or something like that, this is important for custom APIs. But what happens here, the interesting is that if I go to the customer and if I change a customer, this change when saved reflects to Dataverse. So sorry, I click. If I change, for example, the description, and if I go into the tables in Dataverse, and I select the customer table, customer. This is my customer table exposed from Business Central. Open new tab. Not very quick, my environment, sorry. But you can see that the data is modified in Dataverse, and vice versa. If I modify the data here, the data is modified also in Business Central. And if I create a flow here, the powerful of them is that I can create a flow here that react to, for example, like this. It reacts to customer change. So when a row is added or modified to the customer table in Dataverse, I can retrieve the modified customer or delete it or something like that, and I can do the other steps. This is triggered by every application that works on Dataverse. So that's, I think, the power of them. And just to quickly go back to the slides because time is running. You can also do, in this way, you can also do more complex things. So, for example, imagine that when a data is added in a Dataverse table, I want to replicate this data across all companies in my tenant. This is difficult to do with the Business Central connector because the Business Central connector is per company, is tiled per company. So you cannot do that easily. With the Dataverse connector, you have the possibility to create a flow that when a row is added, modified, or deleted in the products table, in this case, you are, sorry, I go back. Okay. You add the Dataverse trigger. First, you need to register the Azure Active Directory application in order to be able to call Business Central. Then you can add the Dataverse trigger. You can set your client ID, client secret, and tenant ID, and the environment name. And then you can use the HTTP action to request the access token to Business Central in order to retrieve the list of companies from Business Central. And when you have the list of companies, you can pass the response, call the company API, retrieve the company list, and then create a repeat action that for each company, you can take the action to create items. So for each company, I create an item, making a post action to Business Central for creating items. This is one of the scenarios where, for example, the Dataverse connection together with the HTTP connector and the service to television authentication comes in handy if you want to sync entities between environments. Or last input that I want to leave, for me, absolutely very powerful. Remember that Dataverse is a universe. So I can have in Dataverse also, I can create in Dataverse plugins. I can create in Dataverse custom APIs, custom and Dataverse APIs. And I can do something like, for example, if I have in this environment, if I remember, I have creating a custom action. This custom action, I don't want to go into this because it's out of scope, but in Dataverse, please remember that you can create plugins. Plugins are complex action. You can create custom API. Custom API is an API in Dataverse that has input parameters and output parameters, and then execute code. In code, you can do what you want. So I can, for example, create a workflows. When this custom action is deployed into your Dataverse environment, you can create a workflows like the following, for example. Where when a row is added or modified, for example, in this table, this is a Dataverse table used from a Power Apps application. When someone added or modified an order into this application, I can perform an unbound action. And the action of performing an unbound action in Dataverse permits you to trigger an action. In my case, it's called calculate roll-up cost, passing the parameters, and do complex things. So in this case, for example, I have a B2B order table where the Power App application writes order, and then I have order for shops. And then I have a shop table where I want to automatically calculate the total amount of orders that comes into that shop every day. You can also create actions that starts actions in Power Automate. And this is absolutely important if you have scenarios where you want to integrate Dynamics 365, Power Apps, and so on, because we can also execute plugins. So, for example, from business, if someone modifies something in Business Central, a plugin in Dataverse starts and do actions on every application you have. So that's what I think is one of the power of this new action. I've finished today this my overview. I hope to have give you the inputs. I always remember these are my contacts if you want to ask something. I quickly check the chat in order to be able to. How can a Business Central connector be created both for on-premise and SaaS? Business Central connector has two versions. One is for Business Central on-premise, and one is for Business Central SaaS. So you need, when you create a workflow, you need to select the connector that you want to use, if Business Central or if SaaS, or if Business Central, or if on-premise, sorry. Please remember that the SaaS connector has more features than the on-premise connector. So the on-premise connector is limited. Virtual entities work only with the SaaS connector. Please explain about it. I don't see the image. Okay. Get clipboard. Okay. I think that this image is taken from the input parameter of a workflow that you can create directly from Business Central. And input parameters are different type, text, data, and so on. And you can also pass to the workflow the clipboard. What about premium license connector rate, including some BC subscription? I'm not a full expert on licensing, but if I remember, the Business Central connector requires a premium license, a Power Automate premium license. But if you have Business Central, your user can use the Business Central connector. Power Automate premium license is required for users that are not Business Central users, so it's linked to the Business Central license. Can we call SharePoint lists in Power Automate and pass the data in a customer table? This is very easy because Power Automate has a trigger for reading a SharePoint list. So you can create the SharePoint. We use the SharePoint connector. The SharePoint connector has read the SharePoint, an action called read SharePoint list. You can select your SharePoint, your list, retrieve the fields you want, when you have the fields, you can call for example, the Business Central connector. Business Central connector, create a record. You select in the create a record action, you select customer, the customer table, and then you can pass the field that you want from the SharePoint list to the customer. It's quite easy to do that. Virtual table is going to be huge. You will be able to interface with your BC data from anywhere. Absolutely agree. Is it going to change the way you use BC? Absolutely agree, because as I open the message is passed, it opens the door to a lot of integration and opportunities. I think it's finished. No question.
Thank you so much, Stefano. It was a huge pleasure for showcasing the future of BC, really, and showcasing how to leverage the Power Platform with Business Central. So thank you so much. Round of applause for Stefano. It's a great pleasure. You're one of the grand wizards of Business Central, so we're all very excited that you were able to join us today. And we're all enjoying your book very much, which is called Mastering Business Central.
I hope. I saw also now a question related to the new version of the book. Yes, there will be a new version of the book, not before half of next year. So the book is actually absolutely actual, because the book covers all what you need to start developing and configure a Business Central, and not only covers API, covers telemetries, covers Power Platform. Obviously, latest features are not available in the book. The book will be updated this year, and will be half of next year will be new edition with new features will be available. Just to answer that. I think that I have answered all. Thanks a lot to every one of you. Thanks a lot, Ras, and
thank you, Stefano.
Enjoy the conference.
Excellent, Stefano.
Bye-bye to all.
Make sure you follow Stefano. I've shared his contact details in the chat there. Thank you, Stefano. Take care. See you soon.
You too. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you. That was Stefano from Italy. Great pleasure to have him.